I'm not ashamed.
What was the 8th plague that God inflicted upon Egypt? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of Exodus on Walking Through the Bible.
It's worth the glory of his cross.
If you have a Bible with you, you can turn to Exodus chapter 10. We're going to be reading from verses 1 to 6. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So, Exodus chapter 10, beginning at verse 1. Now the Lord said to Moses, Go into Pharaoh, for I have hardened his heart and the hearts of his servants, that I may show these signs of mine before him, and that you may tell in the hearing of your son and your son's son the mighty things I have done in Egypt, and my signs which I have done among them, that you may know that I am the Lord. So Moses and Aaron came into Pharaoh and said to him, Thus says the Lord God of the Hebrews, How long will you refuse to humble yourself before me? Let my people go, that they may serve me. Or else, if you refuse to let my people go, behold, tomorrow I will bring locusts into your territory, and they shall cover the face of the earth, so no one will be able to see the earth, and they shall eat the residue of what is left, which remains to you from the hail, and they shall eat every tree which grows up for you out of the field. They shall fill your houses, the houses of all your servants, and the houses of all the Egyptians, which neither your fathers nor your fathers' fathers have seen, since the day that they were on the earth to this day. And he turned and went out from Pharaoh. In this episode, we continue our look at the plagues God inflicted upon Egypt as a result of Pharaoh's refusal to let the children of Israel go. We thus far have seen 7 plagues: the plague of the water of the Nile turning into blood, the plague of an overabundance of frogs brought out of the Nile, the plague of lice or ticks, the plague of flies, the plague of pestilence or disease causing death of all cattle in the field, the plague of boils, skin ulcers that turn into running sores, and the plague of hail. Pharaoh was given a chance after each of these plagues to obey the word of the Lord, but after each time he refused, and so God continued plaguing Egypt. The 8th plague that God is going to inflict upon Egypt is the plague of the locusts. A locust is a type of grasshopper with the ability of flight. They migrate in large swarms and do great damage to any crop they pass through. In verse 1, God tells Moses that he had hardened the hearts of Pharaoh and his servants, that he might show his signs before Pharaoh, and so that Moses could tell his children and grandchildren the mighty things the Lord did in Egypt, that they may know that he is Jehovah, the eternal, unchanging God of this universe. We have talked about God hardening the heart of Pharaoh many times, but it's worth repeating here. How did he do it? Did he force Pharaoh to disobey against his will? No, but he used signs that he knew would harden Pharaoh's heart because he knew the type of man Pharaoh was. God was justified in punishing Egypt for what they did to Israel, and he would use that opportunity as a way to show himself to be the only true God of this universe. This show of power was not only for Egypt's sake, but for Israel's sake as well. Israel was going to be a stubborn and fickle people in need of constant reminder of what God had done for them. Without God doing this in Egypt, there would be nothing to remind Israel of. Pharaoh, though, always had the freedom of choice and could have chosen to let Israel go. Moses and Aaron were told to go to Pharaoh and say, Thus says the Lord God of the Hebrews. Lord is again in all caps, so it should read, Thus says Jehovah God of the Hebrews, again asserting that he is the only God. God asked Pharaoh how long it would be before you humble yourself before me. Pharaoh had seen 7 plagues, plagues in which by now a man with a soft heart would have obeyed the word of the Lord. Pharaoh, though, still refused. Pharaoh was told to let Israel go, but if he refused, the next day God would bring locusts on the territory. These locusts would cover all the face of the earth over Egypt and would eat everything left behind after the plague of the hail. If you recall in the last episode, we said that God was merciful for not killing the wheat with the hail so that Egypt would have something to eat. However, because of Pharaoh's continued disobedience, God would remove his mercy and have the locusts eat what remains. Not only would these locusts eat that which was left over from the hail, they would eat of every tree which grows in the field. They would fill the houses and the houses of the servants and eat what is in those houses. This plague would be nothing like any swarm of locusts that Egypt had experienced in the past. Having swarms of locusts come in and devour crops is a natural phenomenon, but God here is distinguishing that with the plague he is about to bring upon Egypt. The mere numbers of locusts present would show that this was from God. Having told Pharaoh what would happen, Moses and Aaron leave his presence. Pharaoh could prevent this plague by letting Israel go. We'll see his response in the next episode. With that, our time is up for today. Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Exodus chapter 10, verses 7 to 11, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time.
I'm not ashamed.
Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.
Of his cross.